The screen of Sarah's phone had become a permanent fixture in her hand. Where once it lay forgotten on the kitchen counter, it now traveled with her, from the living room couch to the bedroom. Her thumb moved with a practiced rhythm, scrolling, tapping. She held it close, often shielding the display from my casual glance. It was a new habit, one that started subtly and then solidified into a constant presence, pulling her attention away from the room, from me. Then the late arrivals began, an extra meeting at the office, a client dinner that ran longer than expected. The explanations were always delivered with a practiced ease, but they lacked substance. No specifics about the client, no details of the meeting's outcome. Just a general statement, a wave of the hand. She would walk in, often after 9, sometimes closer to 10, smelling faintly of something unfamiliar. Her appearance, too, shifted. New blouses, colors she rarely wore, a different scent, a floral note I did not recognize from her usual perfume. It was subtle, not overtly dramatic, but noticeable, like a new coat of paint on a familiar house, making you wonder what occasioned the change. I found a receipt for a downtown boutique tucked into her purse. The total was higher than her usual clothing purchases, for items that never appeared in our shared closet. I reviewed the monthly credit card statement. Below the usual grocery runs and gas station charges, a line stood out. The Gilded Spoon, dinner for 2. The Gilded Spoon was a restaurant downtown, known for its hushed booths and expensive wine list. Sarah and I hadn't been there in years, and certainly not recently. The date was a Tuesday, a night she had claimed to be working late. When I asked about her day, about the new projects at her firm, Sarah's responses grew short, almost clipped. A question about the missing details of an office event would be met with a sharp, "Nothing much, Greg, just work." Her gaze would dart away, to the television or back to her phone. A defensiveness had taken root, a low hum beneath the surface of her usual calm. One evening, after she'd rushed off to a supposed late meeting, I went to move her car into the garage. Her briefcase lay open on the passenger seat, a sheaf of papers spilling out. Beneath them, tucked half hidden, was a key card. It was cream-colored with a small logo, the Grand Inn and Suites, a local place, upscale, a few miles past the downtown area. The date stamped on it was 2 weeks prior, a Friday afternoon. I did not touch it, just registered the name and the date. I made a point of noting the odometer reading on her car, 93,712 miles. The fuel gauge read just under 3/4 full. I wanted a baseline. Later that week, she returned late again, around 11:30. She'd said she was at a colleague's place for a last-minute brainstorming session. I checked the odometer the next morning. It read 93,787 miles. 75 miles. The colleague's house was no more than 10 miles away, round trip. While Sarah was in the shower one morning, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text message notification flashed across the locked screen, too brief for me to read the full content. But the first few words, visible for a second, were "thinking of you, can't wait," and a small heart emoji. It vanished before I could process it completely. I tried to talk about our future, about the renovation plans for the kitchen, about our upcoming anniversary trip. "Remember that bed and breakfast in Door County we liked?" I started. Sarah was distant, her eyes fixed on something outside the window. "We'll see, Greg. Things are just so busy right now." Her tone was dismissive, as if these conversations were an inconvenience. I logged into our shared online bank account. Alongside the usual debit card transactions, there was a series of small ATM withdrawals, always $50 or $75. They were spread out over the last month, often on the same days as her late meetings. Cash. Unaccounted for, separate from our usual spending. One afternoon, I walked into the study to find Sarah at her laptop. The screen was open to a web page, but as soon as she saw me, her hand shot out, clicking the mouse. The browser window closed instantly, replaced by her work email. She smiled, a little too quickly, just finishing up a report. Later, while putting away laundry, I found a small, gift-wrapped box hidden in the back of her closet, beneath a stack of sweaters. It was too small for a scarf, too large for earrings. The paper was an expensive silver, not my choice for wrapping. It wasn't for me, and our child's birthday was months away. I started to pay closer attention to her work calendar, which she kept on the refrigerator. Her scribbled notes for client lunch or conference call, sometimes didn't align with the times she said she was leaving or arriving. There were gaps, unexplained hours, and shifts in schedule that I now observed with a colder, more precise attention. The charge from the Gilded Spoon for $147 was dated Tuesday, October 17th. I checked my own calendar, then the small magnet board calendar Sarah kept on the refrigerator door. That night, she had claimed to be at an all-hands strategy session that ran late, not getting home until after 10. I remembered the detail because I'd eaten dinner alone watching a baseball game. The restaurant was upscale, not the sort of place for a casual work dinner, and certainly not for a solo meal. The inconsistency was now a tangible thing. I started paying closer attention to Sarah's phone, not trying to snoop overtly, but observing. When she left it on the kitchen island while she poured coffee, I noted the top 5 numbers in her recent calls list, committing them to memory. 3 were her colleagues, 1 was her sister. The 5th was an unfamiliar number, a local exchange but no name attached. While she was in the shower the following morning, I quickly typed the number into a reverse lookup website on my own phone. The result? Prepaid mobile device, not traceable. A burner phone. My stomach tightened, a slow, cold twist. I knew I needed more than observations. From my office computer, I located a small magnetic GPS tracker online. It was advertised as discreet, long-lasting battery, real-time tracking. I selected overnight shipping, paying the extra $20. It would arrive tomorrow, a brown box delivered to my workplace. No chance of Sarah seeing it. That weekend, I saw Lisa Henderson at the grocery store. Lisa was a mutual friend, someone Sarah confided in sometimes. Sarah's been so busy lately, hasn't she? I started, pushing our cart slowly down the pasta aisle. Working crazy hours. Lisa nodded, but her eyes flickered. Oh yeah, definitely. Always something going on at the firm, you know. Her voice was a little too casual, her smile a little too fixed. She didn't offer any details, didn't elaborate, just agreed. It wasn't what she said, but what she didn't say, the careful blankness of her expression. I created a new email account, an obscure address I would never use for anything else. The password was a string of random characters, committed only to my memory. This would be where I kept my notes, my findings. A digital safe deposit box for a growing collection of facts. The GPS tracker arrived at my office the next day. It was smaller than I expected, black, with a powerful magnet. That night, after Sarah was asleep, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, I slipped out to the garage. The air was cool, smelling faintly of oil and gasoline. I knelt beside her SUV, fumbling under the rear bumper in the dark. The magnet snapped into place against the metal frame above the exhaust pipe, out of sight unless you knew exactly where to look. I checked it twice, pushing against it, ensuring it was secure. I stood up, brushed the dust from my knees, and went back inside, my movements quiet and deliberate. The next morning, the tracking began. I accessed the online portal from my work computer, checking it periodically throughout the day. The green dot representing Sarah's car moved from our house to her office, then later to a few stops for errands. But a pattern began to emerge. Several times a week, usually in the late afternoon, the dot would travel across town to a residential area on the west side and stop. It would remain there for an hour, sometimes 2, before returning to its typical route home or to another meeting. The address became familiar, 1472 Willow Creek Drive. On my lunch break, I drove past Willow Creek Drive. The house was a modest 2-story brick and siding with a well-maintained lawn. Nothing remarkable. A blue sedan was parked in the driveway. It was clearly a residential property, not a business, not an office park, just a house. Back in my office, I used a public records search to look up 1472 Willow Creek Drive. The owner was listed as David Thorne. The name meant nothing to me. I went to LinkedIn searching for David Thorne. Several profiles appeared. One matched the age range I would expect for someone living in a house like that. His profile listed him as a senior marketing manager at Stratagem Solutions, a competitor to Sarah's firm. Same industry. I then navigated to Sarah's LinkedIn profile, clicking on her connections. David Thorne. His name was there, a recent addition, perhaps within the last month. The digital thread connected them. I returned home that evening. Found the silver gift wrap which she's still hidden in Sarah's closet. I carefully pulled it out, ensuring not to disturb the creases in the paper or the knot in the ribbon. I took a few photographs with my phone, close-ups from different angles, documenting its existence and location. Then, just as carefully, I put it back exactly where I found it. In my private email account, I started a new document. I created a simple spreadsheet, logging every time the GPS tracker showed Sarah's car at 1472 Willow Creek Drive. Date, time of arrival, time of departure, duration. I cross-referenced this with her stated schedule for those days. The discrepancies were consistent. The weight of the information was growing. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Private Investigator, Midwest City. A few options came up. I chose one, a local agency with a professional-looking website, and filled out their online contact form, requesting a discreet consultation for the following week. I needed someone who dealt with facts, not feelings. I met Detective Roy Owens in his small, functional office above a hardware store. He was a man in his late 50s, with a calm demeanor and a neat gray mustache. I laid out my case methodically, presenting the GPS data, the credit card statements, the timeline of Sarah's late arrivals, the unfamiliar perfume, the burner phone number. I spoke in facts, avoiding conjecture. I watched his face as I spoke, noting the absence of surprise, the focused attention. "Based on what you've compiled, Mr. Miller," Detective Owens said, his voice level, "we can certainly proceed with a surveillance operation. Our fees are billed hourly plus expenses. We operate strictly within legal boundaries, meaning no wiretaps, no breaking and entering, just observation, photography, and video." He quoted a retainer, a figure I had anticipated. "Proceed," I told him. "Focus on the address on Willow Creek Drive and any other patterns that emerge." I transferred the initial retainer to his account that afternoon. The investigation was now official. Within 2 days, Detective Owens informed me his team was deployed. They began monitoring Sarah's movements. Their initial reports confirmed what my GPS tracker had already indicated. Her car, the familiar silver sedan, was repeatedly seen parked outside David Thorne's residence on Willow Creek Drive. These were not quick stops. The car would often remain there for an hour, sometimes two, in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon or a Thursday morning. The photographic evidence started to arrive in my secure email account. A series of high-resolution images. Sarah in her work clothes entering the front door of 1472 Willow Creek Drive. Another image an hour later of her exiting, adjusting her purse strap, her expression unreadable. Each photo was time-stamped, meticulously documented. Then came the public sightings. A video clip, grainy but clear enough, of Sarah and David Thorne walking together through a park downtown during lunch. Their hands were clasped, fingers intertwined. Another clip showed them at an outdoor cafe, leaning close, their heads almost touching as they talked. A shared laugh, intimate. Not just colleagues. This wasn't professional networking. Detective Owens provided me with the first comprehensive report, a PDF document filled with these images and video links, all time-stamped. I sat at my desk, the glow of the screen on my face, and cross-referenced each entry. October 24th, 1:15 p.m., Sarah Miller observed entering 1472 Willow Creek Drive, left at 2:30 p.m. That was the day she had told me she had a client lunch that ran long at a restaurant near her office. The evidence contradicted her. Systematically, fact by fact, her narrative was unraveling. The PI team also intercepted a credit card receipt from a restaurant called the Lakeview Bistro, another upscale spot, 20 minutes from downtown. The date was November 3rd. David Thorne's name was on the receipt. Dinner for two. Sarah had told me she was out with Lisa and some girlfriends that night, a girls' night. I'd called Lisa that evening and she'd sounded genuinely surprised when I mentioned Sarah, claiming she thought Sarah was with me. I hadn't pressed it then. Now I understood. The next weekend, Detective Owens called. "Mr. Miller, your wife and Mr. Thorne have taken a trip. They checked into the Blackwood Lodge this afternoon up near Willow Lake." He provided me with the lodge's address. Willow Lake was a 3-hour drive from home, a secluded, romantic getaway spot, the kind of place we used to go. The photos followed quickly. Sarah and David Thorne standing at the check-in desk of Blackwood Lodge carrying small duffel bags. They were smiling, relaxed. Later, another photo from a distance of them walking towards one of the cabins, his arm around her waist. I needed to secure this growing volume of sensitive data. I set up a temporary, secure cloud storage account, a service known for its encryption and privacy. All reports, photos, and videos from Owen's investigations were uploaded there, organized into dated folders. It was a digital vault, inaccessible to anyone else. At home, I maintained the routine. I asked Sarah about her day, listened to her sometimes vague answers, nodded. I ate dinner with her, watched television, talked about mundane household matters. I offered to help with chores, commented on the weather. I was careful, precise in my actions, ensuring no shift in my behavior would alert her. The facade was perfect. No hint of the growing file in the cloud, no trace of the detective's reports, no sign of the cold, hard facts accumulating. I called Detective Owens and requested a final comprehensive report. Everything, I told him, every log, every photograph, every video clip, itemized and dated. He assured me it would be ready by the end of the week. When it arrived, a thick digital file, I downloaded it to my computer, then uploaded it to my secure cloud storage. I began to organize. I created a master timeline document, a single, unbroken sequence of events. Each entry included the date, time, location, and a brief, factual description of what occurred. Cross-referencing my initial GPS data, the credit card statements, and now the professional surveillance reports. October 17th, Sarah claimed all-hands strategy session. PI report shows the Gilded Spoon, dinner for two, paid by David Thorne. November 3rd, Sarah claimed out with girlfriends. PI report shows the Lakeview Bistro, dinner for two, paid by David Thorne. The pattern was stark, undeniable. I printed every relevant financial statement, joint credit card statements, our shared checking account, the ATM withdrawal logs. Using a yellow highlighter, I marked each suspicious charge, each unexplained cash withdrawal. These were physical pieces of evidence, tangible and incontrovertible. For digital files, the photos of Sarah entering Thorne's house, the video clips of them holding hands, the pictures from Blackwood Lodge, I backed them up again. First, to an external hard drive I kept in a locked drawer at work, then to a second cloud storage service, a completely separate provider. Redundancy was key. If one failed, the others would hold. The pressure of holding all this information, maintaining the facade, was significant. I needed to talk to someone. I drove to Mark Jensen's place, unannounced. Mark was my oldest friend, someone I trusted implicitly. He let me in, offered me a beer. I sat at his kitchen table and in a measured tone laid out the facts. I started with the phone, the late nights, then the Jeep, the PI, the photos. Mark listened, his face growing grimmer with each detail. When I finished, the silence in his kitchen was heavy. "Jesus, Greg," he finally said. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I didn't need advice, just a witness, a confidant. He swore he wouldn't tell anyone. Back home, I began to research family law attorneys. I focused on firms known for handling complex divorce cases, especially those involving infidelity, in this region. I looked for experience, reputation, and discretion. I wanted someone who dealt with facts, not emotion. I started a list of questions for my initial consultation. How does infidelity impact asset division in this state? What about spousal support? Child custody arrangements? What's the process for filing? What evidence is admissible? How long does it typically take? I wanted to be prepared, to understand the path ahead. I went to the bank and rented a safe deposit box. Inside, I placed the printed financial statements, the highlighted charges, and selected hard copies of the most damning photographs. These were the physical anchors to the digital evidence, secured off-site. I also drafted a precise, objective summary of the entire situation for my future attorney. It was a 5-page document outlining the timeline of events, the type of evidence collected, and the key players involved. No emotional language, just a cold presentation of facts. I started to mentally rehearse the conversation I would eventually have with Sarah. I pictured her face, her reactions. My goal was clarity, not confrontation. I would present the evidence calmly, factually. "Sarah, I know about David Thorne. I have proof. No accusations, no hysterics, just the truth." I gathered all necessary personal documents. Our marriage certificate, our joint tax returns from the last 5 years, bank statements, investment account summaries, everything a lawyer would need to understand our financial landscape. There was no prenuptial agreement, a detail I now regretted. Based on my research, I found a well-regarded family law attorney, Martha Hayes, whose firm specialized in these matters. Her website emphasized a discreet and results-oriented approach. I called her office and scheduled an initial consultation for the following Tuesday. That night, after Sarah was asleep, I slipped out to the garage one last time. I knelt by her SUV, my hand finding the small, magnetic GPS tracker. I pulled it off with a quiet click, no longer needing its services. I tucked it into my pocket, later disposing of it in a public trash can miles from our home. I returned inside, went to my computer, and meticulously cleared my browsing history. Then I logged into my private email account, the one I'd created for the investigation, and deleted it, making sure no digital trace remained. The chapter of gathering evidence was closed. My meeting with attorney Martha Hayes was held in her corner office overlooking the courthouse square. She was sharp, efficient, and her gaze missed nothing. I laid out the organized evidence package, the timeline, the printed financial statements, the secure tablet with the PI reports, photos, and videos. My summary document was on top. She took her time, reading through my summary first, then methodically reviewing each piece of evidence, clicking through photos and playing short video clips. "This is strong, Mr. Miller," she stated, her voice calm. "Very strong. The documentation, the timestamps, the consistency of the findings, all admissible. It leaves little room for doubt." She closed my folder. "In this state, infidelity can impact asset division, though not always directly in a punitive way. Spousal support will be a factor, given your respective incomes and the duration of the marriage. Custody arrangements for your children will also need to be decided." She then walked me through the legal process. First, we draft the petition. Once filed, Sarah will be served, usually by a neutral third party. This initiates the formal divorce proceedings. From that point, discovery begins, and we move towards mediation or, if necessary, trial. She explained the steps with clarity, removing the abstract fear and replacing it with a clear, logical sequence. We moved on to the confrontation itself. "When you tell her, Mr. Miller, it needs to be controlled. Document the conversation if possible, even if it's just notes afterward. Avoid accusations. Stick to the facts you have gathered. We want to avoid any emotional outburst from your end that she could later spin against you." She advised against doing it at home initially, suggesting a neutral location if possible. "Change all your joint account passwords," she instructed. "Establish new, separate accounts for your paychecks if you haven't already. Move half of any joint savings to a separate account, clearly documenting the transfer. Protect your financial interests immediately." This was practical advice, a cold necessity. "Most importantly," she continued, "remain calm. No yelling, no angry texts, no dramatic gestures. She may try to provoke you. Do not give her the satisfaction or the ammunition." That afternoon, I started moving things. Small items, things with sentimental value that were purely mine. Old photographs, a watch my father gave me, books. I packed them discreetly into boxes and took them to Mark Jensen's garage. He had offered the space, no questions asked. It was a tangible step, a preparation for the inevitable separation. I also began looking at temporary living arrangements online, short-term rentals, extended stay hotels. I needed to know my options if staying in the marital home became untenable after the confrontation. Planning, not reacting. Attorney Hayes drafted the initial petition for divorce. It cited irreconcilable differences, but also included specific grounds related to Sarah's marital misconduct, backed by the evidence. This was the formal opening salvo, awaiting my command. I spent an evening ensuring all our financial records were easily accessible. Tax returns, investment statements, mortgage documents. Transparency would be crucial in the legal process, and I wanted to be fully prepared for any disclosure requests. We discussed the children. "Their well-being is paramount," Martha said. "We will push for a custody arrangement that prioritizes their stability and minimizes disruption." This was the only part that felt truly heavy, the weight of their innocent involvement. They were caught in a current they didn't create. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. I decided on the timing of the confrontation. Not immediately after work, when she might be tired or stressed. Not late at night when emotions run high. A Saturday morning, a time when she was usually relaxed, less guarded. It would provide space and a calmer atmosphere, at least initially. I wrote out a brief, factual statement to present to Sarah. 3 sentences. Sarah, I know you've been seeing David Thorne. I have evidence of your relationship and your activities. I've initiated divorce proceedings. No room for argument, no emotional language, just a delivery of the facts. I mentally prepared for her reactions. Denial would be the first, then anger probably, tears perhaps, or a calculated attempt to minimize, to rationalize, to manipulate. I ran through the scenarios in my mind, steadying myself for each possibility. I would not engage. I would stick to the statement. I chose a Saturday morning, a week after my meeting with Martha Hayes. The children were at a friend's house, a pre-arranged play date. Sarah was in the living room drinking coffee and reading a magazine. The house was quiet, the autumn light filtering through the windows. I walked in carrying a manila folder. Sarah, I said, my voice even, we need to talk about something serious regarding our marriage. She looked up, a slight frown creasing her brow. Serious? What is it, Greg? Is everything okay? Her tone was mild, perhaps a touch annoyed at the disruption. I sat opposite her, placing the folder on the coffee table. No, Sarah, everything is not okay. I opened the folder, pulling out the printed GPS log. I've been tracking your movements, specifically your car's movements. This is a log of your visits to 1472 Willow Creek Drive, David Thorne's house. Her eyes widened, a flicker of something, surprise or fear crossing her face. What are you talking about? That's ridiculous, Greg. I don't know anyone at that address. I ignored the denial. On October 17th, you were there from 1:15 to 2:30 p.m. You claimed an all-hands strategy session at work that day. On November 3rd, you were there again from 3:45 to 5:00 p.m. That was the day you said you were out with Lisa and some girlfriends. I then slid the printed credit card statements across the table, highlighting the Gilded Spoon and the Lakeview Bistro charges. These are dinners for 2, paid by David Thorne, on days you claim to be elsewhere. Next, I placed the photographs on the table. One by one, Sarah entering David Thorne's house, Sarah exiting, Sarah and David Thorne holding hands in the park, Sarah and David Thorne at the outdoor cafe, leaning close, Sarah and David Thorne checking into Blackwood Lodge, each one time-stamped, undeniable. Her face, as she looked at them, went through a series of transformations. Disbelief, then a growing realization, then a hard, cold anger. She pushed the photos away. Where did you get these? This is an invasion of privacy, Greg. I found this in your briefcase, Sarah, I said, placing the hotel keycard for the Grand Inn and Suites beside the photographs. The date on it, 2 weeks ago, matches one of the days David Thorne's car was tracked at that same hotel's parking lot by a private investigator. You hired a private investigator? She hissed, her voice rising. You've been spying on me? What kind of husband does that? A husband who needed facts, Sarah, not vague excuses or lies about extra meetings. My tone remained level. Your actions provided the reason for my investigation, not the other way around. Her anger flared. This is all your fault, Greg. You've been distant, always focused on work, never paying attention to me. I was lonely. My actions are not an excuse for your choices, Sarah, I stated plainly, and your choices have consequences. I picked up the final document from my folder. I've consulted with an attorney, Martha Hayes. She's drafted an initial petition for divorce. I've also prepared a preliminary separation agreement, which I'd like you to review. I slid the documents across the table. She stared at the papers, her face slackening. Divorce? You can't be serious. I am. My intention is to seek an amicable but firm resolution. The welfare of our children is my priority. This is not up for negotiation. I looked her directly in the eye. Until the legal details are sorted, I will be staying in the guest room. We will maintain a civil environment for the children. All communication regarding the divorce will go through our respective attorneys. She started to cry then, quiet sobs at first, then larger gasping breaths. Greg, please, don't do this. We can fix this. I can stop seeing him, I swear. The decision is made, Sarah. It's a logical conclusion based on your actions, not a snap judgment. There's nothing to fix. I stood up. I presented the facts. The evidence is clear. I'm done discussing it. I walked away, leaving her sitting there with the papers and the photographs. The next morning, a Sunday, Sarah was gone by the time I woke. Her side of the bed was cold. In the master closet, a few empty hangers swayed. Her toothbrush was gone from the bathroom, some cosmetics. She had taken minimal personal belongings, just enough for immediate use. No note, no message. Just absence. I methodically secured the house. I called a locksmith. By noon, new deadbolts were installed on all exterior doors, and the garage door code was changed. I confirmed my important documents, birth certificate, social security card, the safe deposit box key, were still in their secure location in my office. I emailed Martha Hayes, informing her of Sarah's departure. Martha then sent a formal notification to Sarah's attorney, whose contact information had been provided in a brief, unaddressed text message Sarah had sent me an hour before she left. The notification confirmed the separation and reiterated the initial terms of the divorce petition. Later that afternoon, I sat the children down. They were 9 and 7. Mommy and Daddy are going to live in different houses for a while, I told them, keeping my voice steady. This is an adult decision, and it has nothing to do with you. You are loved by both of us, and that will never change. They looked confused, scared. I hated that I was the one delivering this news, but I knew it had to come from me, factually, calmly. I worked with Martha to create a temporary, clear, and consistent schedule for the children to see Sarah. It stipulated specific pickup and drop-off times to be facilitated by a neutral third party, Sarah's sister, at first. It aimed for predictability, to give them some stability in the upheaval. My first order of business financially was to change all shared account passwords. Then I established new individual banking accounts for myself. My paycheck was redirected to my new account. I moved half of the joint savings into my own account, documenting the transaction meticulously, as Martha had advised. Within days, Martha Hayes filed the divorce petition with the court. The legal process had officially begun. The county clerk's office acknowledged receipt. This was no longer just an internal matter. It was now a public record. Sarah, through her attorney, responded swiftly. A letter arrived from a firm downtown, disputing some of the terms of the divorce, particularly regarding asset division and temporary spousal support. This was expected. Communication between us was now strictly routed through our respective legal representatives, a buffer against emotion. I maintained detailed records of every expenditure and financial movement, every grocery receipt, every bill paid, every transfer. This was crucial for the eventual financial disclosures required in court. I kept a running spreadsheet, updated weekly. I continued to monitor any additional financial or circumstantial evidence that surfaced. Old statements, anything that might be relevant to asset division or Sarah's spending patterns. The investigation, while formally concluded, still had a passive component. The weight of the betrayal, the lies, and the decision to divorce began to take its toll. I scheduled an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Ellen Roth. The first session was about processing the shock, the anger, the quiet sadness. It was a space to acknowledge the emotional impact without compromising my logical approach to the legal battle. I also began the process of updating my will and other legal documents. My life insurance beneficiary, my healthcare proxy. Everything needed to reflect my new marital status and my primary role as the children's guardian. The visitation schedule for the children became a rigid routine. Wednesdays after school, alternating weekends. I ensured their routines were as undisturbed as possible, their comfort the priority. It was the only part of this that felt straightforward, morally clear. I avoided all direct communication with Sarah. Any messages, any questions, went through Martha. The silence between us, once filled with routine pleasantries and shared plans, was now a void, filled only by the cold exchange of legal documents. The legal process unfolded with methodical precision. Attorney Hayes and Sarah's attorney, a woman named Ms. Davies, exchanged financial disclosures. Thick binders arrived in the mail, full of bank statements, tax returns, and investment summaries. I sat down with my own copies, cross-referencing Sarah's declarations against the information I had already gathered. My aim was to identify any hidden assets, any inconsistencies that might suggest she was attempting to obscure parts of her financial picture. There were a few discrepancies, minor at first glance, but enough to warrant further inquiry. Attorney Hayes then submitted a series of interrogatories to Ms. Davies, specific written questions Sarah was required to answer under oath. These probed her income, her assets, her spending habits, and pointedly the nature of her relationship with David Thorne. I, in turn, received my own set of interrogatories from Sarah's legal team. I provided detailed factual responses, reviewed meticulously by Martha. Each answer was carefully worded, avoiding any emotional language, sticking strictly to what was demonstrably true. The next phase was depositions. These were scheduled for me, for Sarah, and a separate one for David Thorne, as his financial involvement, particularly in the dinner for two charges and the lodge stay, was now relevant to the marital estate. Martha prepared me thoroughly for my deposition. "They'll try to provoke you, Mr. Miller," she warned. "They'll try to get you to admit to invading her privacy, to being jealous, to having anger issues. Stick to the facts. Answer only the question asked. Do not volunteer information. Maintain your composure." My deposition lasted 3 hours. I sat across from Ms. Davies and a court reporter, a small microphone on the table. She questioned me about everything: my observations, the GPS tracker, the PI, my conversations with Sarah. I answered calmly, factually, referring to dates, times, and documents. Yes, I noted the mileage discrepancy. Yes, I hired a private investigator after my wife's behavior became suspicious. Yes, the photographs corroborate her presence at Mr. Thorne's residence. My voice was even, my gaze steady. When Sarah's deposition took place, Martha Hayes rigorously challenged her statements. She highlighted the discrepancies between Sarah's sworn testimony about her activities and the surveillance evidence we possessed. "Ms. Miller, you testified that on October 17th, you were at an all-hands strategy session. Do you recall that testimony?" "Yes. And yet, here in Exhibit C, we have a credit card receipt for dinner for two at the Gilded Spoon, paid by Mr. Thorne on that very date. How do you reconcile these two statements?" Sarah stammered, struggled to explain. The facts were relentless. The court ordered an independent valuation of our shared marital assets: the house, our investment portfolios, our retirement accounts. An appraiser came to the house, took measurements, reviewed renovations. Financial experts combed through our ledgers. I provided all necessary documentation, granting them full access. Martha Hayes filed a motion to compel further discovery. Based on a few minor omissions in Sarah's initial financial disclosures, Martha believed there might be more she was attempting to hide. It was a strategic move, keeping pressure on Sarah to be fully transparent. Then settlement negotiations began. The attorneys met, exchanged proposals, argued positions. The goal was to reach an agreement outside of a protracted and expensive trial. I reviewed each offer that came from Sarah's side. Some were low, underestimating the strength of my evidence. Some tried to shift more of the marital debt onto me. I considered each offer carefully, weighing the financial implications, the long-term impact on the children, and the costs of continuing to litigate. With Martha's advice, I made counteroffers. My objective was a fair division, not punitive retribution. I wasn't looking to destroy her, just to separate justly. Throughout this process, I maintained a consistent and neutral demeanor. Every communication, every decision was focused on logical outcomes. There was no room for emotional vindication, only for the equitable resolution of a marriage that had, through Sarah's choices, irrevocably ended. The settlement negotiations with Sarah's attorney, Ms. Davies, reached an impasse. There were disagreements on spousal support and the division of specific investments. This necessitated a mandatory mediation session overseen by a court-appointed mediator. We met in a sterile conference room, the mediator at the head of the table, Martha Hayes and I on one side, Sarah and Ms. Davies on the other. The air was thick with unspoken tension. During the session, I presented my case not with emotion, but with the cold, hard logic I had cultivated. I referred to the surveillance reports, the financial discrepancies, the ATM withdrawals, the hotel key card. I spoke to the mediator, but my words, backed by Martha, were aimed at Sarah. The financial impact of Sarah's choices, including the expenses incurred during her affair, directly depleted marital assets. My documentation supports a fair division reflecting these facts. Sarah sat silently, her face carefully neutral. After hours of back and forth, concessions from both sides, and Martha's firm guidance, a mediated agreement was finally reached. It detailed the asset division. The house would be sold, with proceeds split of it in a specific ratio. Child custody was established as joint legal custody, with me as the primary residential parent and a clear visitation schedule for Sarah. Spousal support was agreed upon for a finite period, acknowledging Sarah's earning capacity. It was a compromise, but a fair one based on the evidence. The divorce decree was drafted by Martha, meticulously incorporating every agreed-upon term. It was a dense legal document, the culmination of months of investigation and negotiation. We reviewed it, ensuring every detail was accurate. It was then presented to the judge for approval. A few weeks later, a letter arrived from Martha's office. The judge had reviewed the decree, found it to be fair and in the best interest of the children, and had granted the final divorce. The marriage was legally dissolved. The paper felt heavy in my hands, a testament to an ending. I often reflected on the moral consequences of Sarah's actions. The irreparable damage to trust, not just between us, but to the very idea of a family structure built on honesty. The children, innocent in all this, were now navigating a divided home, grappling with a reality they didn't choose. That was Sarah's legacy, not mine. I would sometimes see Sarah and David Thorne around town, usually at a distance. They were together. Always. He seemed thinner. She seemed less vibrant than she once had. Their smiles, when I glimpsed them, often seemed forced, a superficial veneer over something transient. It confirmed my initial assessment. Built on deceit, such a relationship could only have a limited, hollow foundation. My focus shifted entirely to rebuilding my own life and establishing unwavering stability for my children. Their routines became sacred. Our home, now just theirs and mine, became a sanctuary of predictability. I demonstrated resilience not through grand gestures, but through consistent presence, quiet strength, and steady support. The house was put on the market and sold quickly. I handled the transactions with calm efficiency, liquidating marital assets as per the divorce decree. The proceeds were distributed, the final figures matching the agreement. Every legal and financial obligation was met. The chapter of that marriage was unequivocally closed. There was pain, yes, a quiet, persistent ache from the betrayal, but there was also a cold satisfaction. The logical pursuit of truth had yielded justice, imperfect though it might be. I had sought facts, and the facts had set me free. The children, though impacted by the separation, began to adapt. They saw me as a stable figure, a constant in their shifting world. Their laughter, once muted, grew louder, more frequent. It was a slow mending, but a mending nonetheless. I planned for my future now, free from the deception. A new sense of predictability emerged, different from the one I had envisioned, but one I could build on. I realized that while the world isn't always predictable and people can betray, a methodical approach, a relentless focus on facts, can bring clarity and forge a path forward, even in the face of the most profound betrayal. The unraveling of Greg's marriage left scars that ran deeper than legal documents could define. Sarah's betrayal, exposed through cold, undeniable facts, shattered not just a union, but the foundational trust upon which a family was built. The children, innocent witnesses to a fractured home, bore the silent weight of choices made by adults, now navigating a reality shaped by deceit. Sarah's pursuit of a superficial passion with David Thorne led her down a path of diminishing returns, exchanging genuine connection for a transient liaison that ultimately proved hollow. Greg, through his methodical pursuit of truth, salvaged his dignity and secured a stable future for his children. But the cost of that clarity was the permanent loss of an illusion. The betrayal's profound consequence was a stark lesson in the fragility of human promises and the enduring power of cold, hard evidence to redefine a life, leaving behind a new, colder landscape where trust was a memory.